Hello and welcome to this episode of Last Week. Here I like to discuss some recent news events for electric vehicles and renewable energy and give my take and my opinions on what's actually going on. In this week's episode, I'm going to try and cover a little bit more than just last week because of Thanksgiving break, and I'm going to be out of the area, so I figured I'd cover more like a week and a half. But in this episode, first, can Tesla weld steel? Maybe. But they can throw a party, and they can build chargers. But can they do it well? Is Fisker doing us a solid? And what exactly are GM's electric vehicle plans? Well, VW, they now vow to sell 1.5 million electric vehicles in China. And can BMW get their i3 back on the road? Okay, so to start, let's discuss a little bit about Tesla. Now, this is going to be a rehashing of a previous story. And at the point in time that we're actually filming now, it appears that Tesla might have finally gotten their Model 3 production moving forward. The first non-Tesla employees are now actually able to place their order, or at least start to submit their order for their Model 3 through their online configurator. Now, earlier in the month, Elon had mentioned that, and this is at the Gigafactory, that they were scrambling to rewrite, years worth of software code. And the thing is that was interesting about that is the Panasonic CEO had stated that they were having to build batteries manually or by hand. Now, the thing that doesn't make sense to me is that wouldn't require that sort of programming. So what was Tesla, what were they rewriting the software for? What were they programming? Well, a article that got kind of rehashed by Seeking Alpha was referencing back to some issues that Tesla was having welding steel for the Model 3. So remember the Model S and the Model X, they're all aluminum. It different machinery, different techniques. And so now they're trying to weld high strength steel with the Model 3. It seems like a very straightforward thing. It seems very easy to do. However, if they're trying to automate a line to do that, that could have been where the trouble is. Now, of course, everybody assumes that because Elon was saying this when he was at the Gigafactory, that it had something to do with the battery pack creation, but it's possible. It seems very, very strange. So perhaps it is one of those issues where they simply just needed to reprogram the automated welders for the Model 3. Hopefully, though, again, as owners or reservation holders are now able to start configuring their Model 3s. Hopefully they're past that and they can start moving forward. So I don't necessarily agree with this sort of short bearish mentality of Seeking Alpha, but it is worth noting that that is possibly where their hang-up was. But again, that's a good sign, because once that's done, it means that they can start finally ramping up to those proposed production numbers, which we could be seeing several thousand Model 3s per month being produced in the next couple of months. Not bad. Next, Tesla had their final unveiling party of the Tesla Semi. Now, this had been postponed by over a month, and the claim was that it had to do with a hurricane hitting Puerto Rico and sending help and assistance there. And of course, most people assume that there also had to have been some issues with the Model 3 that required Elon Musk's attention. Now, one thing that I did note, and this has nothing to do with the actual presentation and party, on the Model 3 owners forums, or at least one of them on Facebook, their owners group, a lot of people were complaining because they're unveiling this cool Semi and they're unveiling this Roadster. The Semi can actually out accelerate the Model 3, but a lot of these reservation holders were complaining because, well, you shouldn't be unveiling a new product or two new products until you're getting mine produced. This could actually be a good sign, because he wouldn't say this was the reason, but if Elon Musk was so preoccupied with the Model 3 that he couldn't do the Tesla Semi unveiling, then that could have been why it was delayed. But that could also be a good sign, again, that production is going to start moving forward and advancing with the Model 3 a lot more rapidly. So, again, trying to show some silver linings. But onto actually the Semi and the Roadster. Now, the Semi, it was pretty much everything that I expected it to be. I had run some different calculations, run some different numbers. I used a calculator that's available online. I'll link to it below. The EcoModder forum, they have a calculator that can let you calculate things like rolling resistance and air resistance and energy costs. And based on what I know about semis, based on what I know about the energy requirements, all of the numbers that Tesla threw out there for the Semi are all, completely within the realm of possibility. And more than likely, it's going to have about a 500 kilowatt hour battery pack. And, maybe ironically or not, the entire Semi itself should weigh in about the same as a typical diesel Semi. So all of that is really cool. All of that is good. They talked about multiple motors, so it's very likely that it is running on 6 independent motors, electric motors. They also noted a mega charger, which, based on the battery pack size, energy requirements, more than likely you're looking at about an 800 kilowatt charge rate, which is pretty cool. But also, and this is something that's happened very recently, I just read, and I'll link to this below, is an Engadget interview with a trucker, and the trucker was talking about some concerns with the Semi, and they are valid, right? The things about sitting in the center isn't always a good thing. Having windows that don't open isn't always a good thing. The discussion of whether there needs to be mirrors, that's all very important. Now, with Tesla, I'm reasonably sure that there's going to be enough camera angles to cover all of the different possible mirror configurations that you might want. However, displays do go down. Physical mirrors can go down, but they're much easier to replace or repair. So if a display goes down, does that mean you have to pull over your stopped driving until you can get that display up and running again? It's a similar concern with the Model 3, so we'll see how that's handled. But overall, the numbers are exactly what I expected. I did a review on it, just my initial thoughts, and if you'd like to look at that, I'll also link that below. And then, of course, the big surprise was they let out with the Roadster. Now, this Roadster, well, the big numbers, it will accelerate 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds and 0 to 100 in 4.2. It's a very fast car, has 620 miles of range. And but the thing is, there's a discussion about what kind of battery technology. This is my personal opinion on it. I think that Elon Musk was making a jab at Fisker, because I do not think that with the size and the format of that vehicle and the acceleration numbers that you're reasonably going to fit 200 kilowatt hours of batteries in that car using Tesla's existing battery technology. What is that implying? Something more along the lines of solid state. Because right now, in theory, you could get that car to do 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds if you had about 1,000 kilowatts of motor power. Now, that is feasible, right? But you're looking at a 5,000 to 6,000 pound car. So while it might out-accelerate something like a Bugatti Veyron, it will be terrible if you try to take it to the track. It's going to slide off the track because it's too heavy. It can barely hold itself on the ground. And when it comes to actually stopping, that might also be an issue. Unless, again, they've developed some sort of solid state battery, and this is simply Elon Musk's telling Fisker, hey, we got it too. Okay, the last bit about Tesla, I promise. I recently, on a road trip up to Northern California, decided to make a detour to the new Tesla supercharging facility that came online in Kettleman City, California. Now, in it, I did a quick walkthrough, and you can see the video. I'll link to it below. But that was just sort of my impressions visiting, right? And so I wanted to, after digesting the information, get a little bit more into it in terms of my feelings about the charger location, all of that. So to start with, from a 10,000 foot view, just looking down at it on paper, it's exactly what we should be looking for high-speed charging corridors. So we know VW with Electrify America isn't going to do anything like this, but it's what needs to be done. Now, Kettleman City is about halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco, or the greater Los Angeles area, the greater San Francisco area. That's a very high traffic area. Interstate 5 is very highly trafficked, and when there's not traffic on the road, you can go fairly fast. So having this station halfway between makes a lot of sense for 200 plus mile electric range vehicles. So the location is ideal in that regard. It's just the first, hopefully, of many. But also, by placing it outside of major city areas, you almost guarantee that the chargers aren't going to be highly occupied by local electric vehicle drivers. And that's a big, big deal, right? So a lot of Tesla's current superchargers are actually located within the city limits of fairly large cities. That's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. So if Tesla is starting to shift these fast charging locations, especially the larger ones, outside of city limits and on long range corridors, it makes a lot of sense. Also, having solar panels, having battery backups, having huge amounts of redundancy with 40 stalls, all of that great. Now, because there was no representative there to speak with me, and because I'm not a Tesla owner, I have no access to the facility other than the parking lot, I wasn't able to get some of the more interesting details possibly. I don't know, they might not even be on display inside the owner's lounge. However, I'm assuming at the very least, these chargers are 145 kilowatts as Tesla has made. However, Tesla does not always tell us when they make their chargers faster. And one Model 3 was reportedly charging at close to 180 kilowatts. So I don't know which supercharger is actually providing that much power, but if possible, then those might also be that faster format. And you won't really know until a car that can actually charge at that rate goes and plugs in and an owner verifies. But for now, at the very least, I'm going to assume that those chargers are at minimum 145 kilowatts. All of this is great. All of this is exactly as it should be. But now onto the facility. One of my big criticisms was that there was keypads to enter everywhere. Now, I was accused of being a negative Nelly, sour grapes, salty this, salty that. That's all fine. I don't care. But what I do care about is Tesla's business model and Tesla's mission. Now, what happens when you have a closed-off facility like that? It is essentially a marketing opportunity. The Tesla Owner's Lounge is essentially a Tesla store. You can kind of see from the outside there are products inside, there are displays, they talk about their solar panels, they talk about their power walls. It is marketing, and there were dozens of people there who were not Tesla owners who came just to check it out. But they couldn't use the bathroom and they couldn't access the building because it requires a key code. Even Tesla owners who were plugged in and charging would walk 200 feet to the bathroom, see a key code, throw their arms up in the air and say, "What's going on?" and have to walk back to their cars to get the key code just so they could use the bathroom. The last thing I'm thinking about when I plug in my car and need to go use the bathroom is, what's the key code on the dash display? Big problem, in my opinion. Now, I don't care if they want to make things exclusive and lock out anybody who's not a Tesla owner. Well, fine, but you can do it better, right? They're releasing a $35,000 car that allows you to walk up to it with nothing more than your phone in your pocket, and it recognizes you and unlocks. You built a multi-million-dollar facility and you can't do the same thing? All you have to do is say, download this Tesla app, load it onto your phone, let us know who you are, bring them into the ecosystem, and then when they walk up to the bathroom, whether they own an $80,000 Model S or not, they can open the bathroom and use it. They can go into the store, they can buy something, they can look at your products, they can enjoy the air conditioning, and they can say, wow, this is a brand I can get behind. That's what Tesla should be doing with these sites. You're welcome. Also, I noted the need for an adapter. Tesla, if your mission is really to push electric vehicles, start selling electric vehicle adapters for your supercharger network. You can charge a pretty penny for them. People will pay. It will fund your network. And it will fund you by paying for the power you produce at a retail rate, not the wholesale rate that you're likely selling power back to the grid at for right now. Again, these are meant with good intentions. So if you want to call me negative, you want to call me bear, you want to call me a short, you want to call me anti-Tesla, go right ahead. But I think these small changes are things that could completely revolutionize and improve Tesla's brand from being elitist, lofty, unattainable to the people's brand. Okay, about that Fisker solid state battery. So recently Fisker had filed some patents for solid state battery technology. Now their e-motion car will still continue to be using the LG Chem nickel cobalt manganese batteries that are currently being produced. But future versions, they say by about 2025, will now be using, or will then be using solid state batteries. And they're claiming to have over 2.5 times the energy density. Now, we know that solid state batteries are likely coming. Two different research organizations have stated that they are a viable option and that it's sort of the next evolution in lithium batteries. And it makes sense. The same thing happened with lead acid batteries going to AGM. All that is absorbed glass mat batteries. So you make the electrolyte solid and it saves a number of issues, right? AGM batteries last longer than typical lead acid batteries. They're harder to, impact. They're more resilient. But the thing is with lithium, right, you're getting more energy in there, it's much denser. You can charge faster because solid-state lithium batteries appear to be more resistant to dendrite development or buildup, which is essentially just crystallization that forms inside lithium batteries and increases resistance over time. So these batteries could make it would be a huge boon. Now, just think, right? Because it's not just the size that's important, because there are physical limitations, right? The Model S platform can only support maybe 100 to 110 kilowatt hours of batteries given Tesla's current technology. The Model 3 is really capped at about 75 to 80 kilowatt hours. The Bolt EV doesn't really have much more room than 65 to 70 kilowatt hours of batteries. So all of these vehicles sort of have the physical limitations as well. So it's weight and size. Now, if you can cut down on the weight, you can cut down on the size needed, now all of a sudden you open up a huge world of possibilities. One of the doors that's been closed to electric vehicles is true performance and track driving. They don't have the energy density to last a full day at the track. And because they're lugging around so much more weight than their internal combustion counterparts, even if they have more acceleration and more power, they end up not being able to lap as quickly. So this could be a huge boom, because really that's one of the, the few areas right now where internal combustion engine really make more sense than, electric engine or electric motors and electric batteries as their technology currently exists, because you're always going to have gearheads, but on top of that you're always going to have a large segment of the population who will never take their car to a track, but they want to know that if they did, they could beat the pants off of everybody else. So these make some really compelling arguments for electric vehicles, and Fisker is working on solid state, Toyota's working on solid state. Several manufacturers are all pushing towards a solid state battery technology. And again, as I said earlier, I believe that Elon Musk's Roadster is even a jab back at Fisker, saying, look, we have this technology too, and it will be coming soon. So solid state batteries, good job. GM's Mary Barra recently gave a presentation at a Barclays Global Automotive Conference where she explained a little bit more about GM's electric vehicle plans and why she feels that GM has a competitive advantage with electric vehicles. One of the things that she illustrated is a long history of developing electric vehicles, and this is very valid. It goes back even farther than the 30 years that she claims. She's really referring back to the EV1 program that sort of revolutionized induction motor technology and the inverters used to power them, the DC to AC motors, inverters used to power the motors, that basically every electric vehicle sold by a major manufacturer at this point is relying on. So beyond that experience, though, she sort of broke down what the plans are and how GM hopes to innovate going into the future. Some of the more important key points that I would like to focus on, or I'd like to emphasize, are she seems to be pointing out the need for 300 plus mile electric vehicles. That I agree with. Even in my opinion, the Bolt EV, pretty much all of the Tesla models at this point, except for the long range Model 3 moving forward, are just sort of that midway point. So the short range electric vehicles, those are really just proof of concept. They're good neighborhood cars, they're good city cars, but once you start to get into actual real world driving, especially in colder climates and areas of the United States that are very dispersed and low population densities, even 200 miles is sort of a low end of what you would want, right? So they're really setting the bar more towards 300 miles, and it really does make sense. When you think of the average internal combustion engine vehicle, they have a range of about 350 to 400 miles. So having 300 miles as your baseline for an electric vehicle moving forward, especially in the US domestic market, makes a lot of sense. Some of the other things that they were pointing out, though, or that Mary pointed out, is a 30% reduction in battery construction costs. So right now, a representative basically let it slip that LG Chem was producing the batteries for GM at a $145 per kilowatt hour cell cost. So the battery pack cost itself appears to be closer to about $200 per kilowatt hour. So what they're now talking about is reducing that kilowatt hour cost per cell down to about $100, which is about a 30% reduction in cell costs. So the battery pack cost, the finished cost, should be still about 120 to 130, maybe as much as $150 per kilowatt hour for the complete pack construction. So yeah, they're looking at about a 30% decrease in cost for batteries. Now, some of the other things that they're talking about is their automation and the LiDAR technology and how they're hoping to mainstream that and produce it as quickly as possible. Some of their goals are, no accidents or fatalities, no congestions, no emissions. They really are pushing both autonomous driving, as well as electric vehicle technology. So this is clearly going beyond CARB and zero emission vehicle requirements. And I'm hoping more of the electric vehicle community starts to see this and starts to say, you know what, maybe we should just be getting behind the companies that are really pushing this technology. So GM and Tesla really need our support, both as consumers, but just as people who are advising friends and family and others, that these manufacturers are really pushing this forward. And one other aspect too that's very interesting is also the emphasis on DC fast charging rates. So based on a previous survey that I had taken with a GM owners advisory panel, that was something they were very interested in, and what's the balance between charging rates and battery fade, as they call it, and what I would consider acceptable. But they seemed very keen on upping these charging rates. They're just very cautious right now, and they're not sure, I think, what they can get away with. With the Bolt EV, they were very clear that the reason that they set the charging rate the way they did is because it was based on the currently available public charging. So basically, they took that rate of about 45 kilowatts and added a little bit of headroom, it looks like. So the Bolt EV can charge at about 55 kilowatts, up to 55% state of charge. But soon we'll be having faster public chargers available, and so we can also expect GM's vehicles to start increasing their charging rate to meet what's actually publicly available in the future. Ever since China announced that they're putting an end to fossil fuel powered vehicles and vehicles with emissions, many auto manufacturers have started targeting that lucrative Chinese market. And VW, it turns out, is no different. So they've now announced 15 new electrified or new energy vehicles by 2020. Now, these 15 vehicles might be plug-in hybrids, they might be pure battery electrics, but they're hoping to win over the Chinese population with them. And starting in 2020, they're hoping to sell at least 400,000 a year. And by 2025, they're hoping to sell at least 1.5 million. Now, the thing is, they're facing a lot of competition. GM is also targeting this market, but we can't, from the outside looking in at China, we tend to forget that they already have one of the number one electric vehicle manufacturers in the world. BYD Motors has sold more electric vehicles than any other manufacturer. They even had a version of the Volt before the Volt came out. So these plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, these pure battery electric vehicles, these are nothing new now on the Chinese market. Now maybe you can add things in terms of value, you can add things in terms of performance or range, right? But you're entering an already competitive market. But the rest of us do benefit, because with VW offering so many new battery electric vehicles and getting behind them, with VWs being forced to electrify America as punishment for their Dieselgate scandal, with GM's adding to that 20 new electric vehicles, we're going to have a lot more options as consumers. So this is good for all of us. This is good for Europe. This is good for the United States. It's especially good for other markets too. So we're seeing now a massive push towards electrification of the automotive fleet, especially for personal transportation. So I'll say good for VW. I hope they can bring more people into the electric vehicle fold. Finally, to close out this week, BMW just issued a recall and a stop sale for their BMW i3. Now, apparently, if you're a fifth percentile female not wearing your seat belt, something about the car in an accident isn't in compliance. Basically, it sounds like maybe the headrests don't actually act as a whiplash protector. But regardless, they're actually having to recall these vehicles and replace and fix what's out of compliance. Now, this also affects new BMW i3 orders. So if you've ordered a BMW i3, if you're waiting for it to come to you, it's going to have to be fixed before it will get there. Now, in the greater scheme of things, this isn't that big of a deal, right? Because BMW is only selling about 500 units worth of i3s per month in the United States. So it's not really going to impact the overall electric vehicle market share. But one concern that there might be for people who are ordering the i3, if the recently proposed tax cut goes into effect, the electric vehicle rebate, $7,500, that's allowed by the federal government might go away. So if you've ordered but haven't yet paid for and received your BMW i3 and you do not receive it by December 31st, there is a possibility that you will no longer be eligible for that tax credit. Now, I know people have said that there is some silver lining that the Senate plan preserves the tax credit while it's only the House plan that doesn't, but it really doesn't matter. It's still on the chopping block, and that's something to remember, is that this EV tax credit isn't a guarantee. So I don't mean to sow fear if you have a BMW i3 on order, but it is something to be aware of, that if you are purchasing, you might not get that tax credit if you don't take ownership of it by December 31st, 2017. But also, another silver lining is this seems like a very minor issue. So even if you don't have the recall done, it doesn't sound like it's really going to affect you unless you are in that percentage of females who fits the body size and you're not wearing your seatbelt and then you get into an accident. So there are a number of things that have to go wrong, and please everyone, just buckle up. Okay, so that concludes this week's episode of Last Week. Again, I'll only be doing one episode between the 2 weeks just because it was a short turnaround time and we have Thanksgiving. So maybe there'll be some bonus stories if something really juicy, other than the Thanksgiving turkey, comes up between now and the next episode of Last Week. But please do let me know what you think. Comments, keep everything civil, and I'm always looking to improve. So thank you, and again, I just want to thank you guys for watching. You could be doing anything else with your time, and you chose to spend it listening to me give you my opinions and share some interesting news stories. So thank you again for your time, and I'll see you next week.